And great pleasure right now to have joining us on the Book Talk segment of the show today. Man who's written a really interesting book about the Statue of Liberty. It's what it's called, the Statue of Liberty, a transatlantic story. And we're joined now by Edward G. Berenson from up in New York today. He's a professor of history and the director of the Institute of French Studies, and also at the Center for International Research in Humanities and Social Sciences at NYU. And he joined us by telephone. Edward, thanks for being with us. How are you today?
I'm fine. Pleasure to be here.
Good to have a chance to talk to you. Read through the book, really enjoyed it. I mean, as somebody, I guess I'm a real New Yorker, even though I've been in Florida for quite a while now. I've never been to the Statue of Liberty. I've seen it, but I've never been to it. So I guess that's kind of common.
That's pretty standard for New Yorkers.
I'm not proud of that, but it is a fact. So next time I'm up there, I'm going to go, because you've given me some great information about it in this book, a lot of stories I did not know about. So I guess you have a large audience of people that don't know a lot about the statue other than, they see it in New York Harbor.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the reasons why I decided to do this history, because the statue is familiar, of course, to everybody, and not just in this country, but you don't know necessarily all that much about it. And so since I had studied about France in my career as a historian, I decided to go back and look at the origins, and I was pretty amazed to find out that the statue really came out of French politics, and it was originally a kind of way of criticizing a French government that was pretty authoritarian. We're talking the 1860s, and they're a group of prominent, well-to-do dissidents who didn't like the fact that their free speech and their civil liberties were being compromised by Napoleon III, who was the ruler. He was the nephew of the great Napoleon. And so one of the motivations behind the Statue of Liberty as a gift to the United States was to say, kind of indirectly, because you have to be careful what you said under that regime, that the Americans have liberty and we French do not.
Yeah, I think every kid knows, obviously, it was a gift to the United States from France, but we don't know exactly why. I think even in the episode of Seinfeld, I don't know if you saw that, Edward, where I think Jerry and George are talking about that. It said, even a country can give a gift to another country, but it's kind of funny the way they talk about it. But why did we get it? So that's kind of, you talk about it in the book. It's really almost a protest of what was going on in France at the time.
Yeah. So it's not, a lot of Americans think it was a gift from the French government to the American government, and it's just not true at all. It was a gift from the French people to the American people, and it was really a French gesture against their government. Their government wasn't at all wild about this gift, because Napoleon III knew that one of the meanings of the gift was as a way of tweaking his own authoritarian regime. And the interesting thing is when the sculptor Bartholdi came over to this country and he wanted to peddle the idea, he had some serious handicaps. He didn't speak a word of English. He didn't know anybody here, and he said, I want to give you Americans this great gift. I want to build the largest statue in the world, but I want to decide what it's going to look like, where it's going to go, how it's going to be built. And furthermore, I want you to build and pay for the pedestal that it's going to stand on.
Right.
So the original response from people in this country was sort of understandably either, kind of perplexed or unenthusiastic, or even in some cases kind of hostile, because people wonder, well, what are the guys' ulterior motives? Why do they want to give us this expensive gift?
It's not really getting a gift.
So it was an uphill battle getting it accepted in this country.
I was going to say, it's like giving a gift to somebody and then they have to pay a lot to keep it, almost.
Yeah. Usually when you give somebody a gift, the person who receives it is in your debt.
Right. Now, how did Bartholdi get involved with the project? Because did he spearhead it from the beginning, or did they kind of come to him, these people in France, say, "Oh, we'd like you to help us build this statue or design
Well,
a statue"?
he was part of the group of people. They were prominent 19th century liberals, and a liberal in the 19th century is more like a conservative now. People didn't believe, were opposed to strong government and that kind of thing. And so he was part of this group of people, included the brother of de Tocqueville and a grandson of Lafayette, and a guy named Edouard de La Boulaye, who was a professor and one of the leading experts France on the United States. And so Bartholdi was part of this group, and they brought him in because he was an artist, and they wanted their gesture to the United States. They wanted their gift to be an artistic one. And so they basically said, we're not sure exactly, they said this to Bartholdi, we're not sure exactly what we want our gift to be, but we know that we want it to be artistic. You're a sculptor, and so it's going to be some kind of sculpture. You go out and figure out what it's going to look like. And so that's the origin of the thing. And so Bartholdi was a guy who was interested in colossal things. One of his first works was a statue of a Napoleonic general that was so big that it didn't fit inside the exhibition hall. And then he took a trip to Egypt, and he went up the Nile, and he saw a colossi that had been built 3,000 years earlier by the ancient Egyptians, and they were still standing there presiding over the Nile. And Bartholdi thought, I want to do that too. I want to build something that's going to be so huge, so colossal, and have such staying power that people are going to admire it hundreds, maybe thousands of years from now.
Mm-hmm. And he also had help from the man the Eiffel Tower is named after too, right? For helping design it, didn't he?
Yeah, and so to build this gigantic statue, you can't. It was just too big for it to be a traditional statue made solidly of metal. And so what the Statue of Liberty is, and this is something that I didn't really know myself, and I don't think that many people know, it's a really, really thin wafer of copper.
Yeah.
The skin of the Statue of Liberty is about the thickness of a penny, and it hangs on a wrought iron skeleton that holds it up in sort of a way that bridges stand and allows the Statue of Liberty to sway with the wind and to absorb different changes of temperature and that kind of thing. So it was really a marvel of engineering, a huge, huge, huge feat of engineering. And since the skeleton was designed by Gustav Eiffel, you could say in a way that inside the Statue of Liberty there is a little mini Eiffel Tower.
Right. I did not realize that either. The Eiffel part and then a very thin layer of copper on the outside. When you think of it, you're talking 1860s, 70s, 80s. Technology wasn't that great to be able to engineer something like that. It really is amazing that, and the immense size of it. Obviously, it's still considered a huge statue, but even then, it's almost one of the tallest buildings in the world, I guess, right?
Yeah. It was. And the other thing that a lot of people don't necessarily know in this country anyway is that the Statue of Liberty was entirely constructed in Paris. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing assembled there and then taken apart and put in 212 shipping containers and transported across the ocean. Well, obviously, a traditional statue, you couldn't do that. You wouldn't be able to take it apart. And so, I don't know how old you are, but when I was a kid, there were erector sets.
I remember that.
And the Statue of Liberty is, in some ways, this gigantic erector set. The copper skin divides up into about 300 separate sheets that were riveted together, and then the wrought iron skeleton disassembles in hundreds of separate pieces, and they were all numbered carefully so that once the statue was reassembled, when it got to New York Harbor, the know how to put it together.
I know for many years, as I mentioned before we started doing the interview, I grew up in New York, and for a long time, you could not go up into the torch part because there was some erosion or problems with it until they did a refurbishment, I guess, about 10, 15 years ago now, or now you can go back up into the
in the mid 1980s.
80s, right?
It was refurbished, but you still can't go up into the torch. You can go to the crown, but the last time you could actually climb up into the torch was 1916.
Okay.
And the reason why it was closed off is that it was during World War I, and some German saboteurs blew up an ammunition factory in New Jersey, not very far from the Statue of Liberty, and the whole back of the Statue of Liberty got blackened by the explosion, and the explosion was so powerful that it would have measured 5 on the Richter scale.
Wow.
People in Philadelphia, you could feel it. and it dislodged the arm and the torch, and it loosened it so that it became unsafe to go up there.
Yeah, I knew for a long time you could. I didn't know it was that far back, but for a long time you couldn't go up into part of it. And then now, who paid for the refurbishment? Was that an American government thing, or was that privately financed?
It was also private money. President Reagan named Lee Iacocca,
that's right,
who was the former chairman of Chrysler, to run a fundraising campaign to come up with the money to pay for the restoration of the Statue of Liberty. And it was in pretty bad shape because the seawater and rainwater had gotten in over here. The statue was 100 years old, and it was rusting on the inside. And the outside had, it was encrusted with bird droppings and, all kinds of things that compromise its appearance. And Lee Iacocca did a brilliant job of fundraising, came up with $270 million. The restoration of the statue cost $70, and then the money that was left over was used to restore Ellis Island.
Right.
Which is another thing that New Yorkers don't do, But it's really the restoration of Ellis Island. There's a big, huge building, kind of the processing center where all these were got a medical examination and all that. They did an amazing job of restoring that building. It is a beautiful museum of immigration.
Yeah, just about everybody from, I guess, late 1800s through about mid-1900s had some relative came through there if they didn't come through there themselves. So it really is part of American history. It's a really fascinating book, Edward, with a lot of information in it. Well, we just touched on it today, but it's called The Statue of Liberty, a Transatlantic story. And Edward, do you have a website that can get a hold of the book or get a hold of you if they like?
Well, I'm putting up my website now, but in the meantime, you can go to Amazon and you can buy it there. You can also get the ebook, and it's in got a Barnes and Nobles close by. You can find it there.
Great. Well, very appropriate since we're coming up on the 4th of July once again. But it's one of those things. I think everybody, if you have a chance to get to New York, even if you don't have to be a New Yorker, but take advantage of it. Get out there and see it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to see the Statue of Liberty close up. You really do.
Edward, appreciate you taking a few minutes today, and look forward to talking to you again. Thanks for joining us.
It was my pleasure. Take care.